Should abortion be legal? I am continuing my series. This is a series I started at Wellspring Community Church called God's Word on Politics and Law. And so for this installment, we're considering the subject of abortion. Now, I'm sorry to inform you that I'm not really going to spend a lot of time with the question, should abortion be legal? Instead, what I'm going to spend most of the time doing is telling you how to answer those who come from a pro-choice, pro-abortion perspective. Because I think when you consider objective morality, when you consider the Bible, when you consider decency by human standards, the answer to that question is a resounding no. Abortion should not be legal. And in fact, abortion is already illegal. It just depends on the circumstances. Now, for those of you who aren't in my class, just so you know, what I'm going to share with you now is from North Carolina, because this is from North Carolina. And let me show you what our statutes have to say about killing the unborn. You can actually be arrested and tried and found guilty of fetal homicide in North Carolina. Now, and I'm pretty sure the same is true with our left coast example, California. At least I know at one time they had statutes as well about fetal homicide. And I want to show you what North Carolina statutes have to say about this, because they recognize the unborn as persons. And here we have it, and so you can see this is from House Bill 215. This is what's on the books in North Carolina. As used in the article only, unborn child means a member of the species Homo sapiens at any stage of development who is carried in the womb. Murder of an unborn child. Penalty. A person who unlawfully causes the death of an unborn child is guilty of the separate offense of murder of an unborn child if the person does any one of the following. And then you have a list. And so you see statutes on the books in North Carolina where killing the unborn, in other words, abortion, is considered illegal. However, there's an exception to this. This is when abortion is not unlawful or illegal. And notice what this says. And by the way, North Carolina is a moderately conservative state. But it says this. So the first part of it tells us that abortion is illegal. You can't kill the unborn. We assume because they are persons and deserve to be protected. But then it says this. Look at A. Notwithstanding any of the provisions of that came before, it shall not be unlawful during the first 20 weeks of a woman's pregnancy to advise, procure, or to cause a miscarriage or abortion when the procedure is performed by a qualified physician licensed to practice in North Carolina and in a hospital or a clinic certified by the Department of Health and Human Services to be a suitable facility for the performance of abortion. In other words, you cannot kill the unborn, but a doctor in a qualified hospital or clinic can do it. Now, and it's not just the first 20 weeks. Skip down to, let me see if it's there. Yeah, look at B. Look at section B. Notwithstanding any of the provisions, and the GS 11444 and then 1445 is what came before. Notwithstanding the provisions of that, it shall not be unlawful after the 20th week of a woman's pregnancy to advise, procure, and it's the same language. So basically, on the one hand, it is illegal to kill, but under certain circumstances, if a doctor does it, it's okay to kill. California's at least used to say something to the effect of that you can't kill the unborn unless the mother is giving consent to it. Now, those kinds of absurdities tell you that something is wrong. Is this a person or is this not a person? If this is a person, how does a doctor doing it in a certified clinic make it okay? That makes no sense whatsoever. Or if this is a person, how does a mother making that decision make it okay? Terrible inconsistency here. And so already we see that abortion is not legal, but under certain circumstances, it is considered legal. And this should not be the case. They're either persons or they are not. So here's what it comes down to. Now, I teach a class called Understanding the Times, which is a high school class for seniors. And one of the things that I have them do is go out and take a survey. They have to ask 10 questions of 5 random strangers, people they do not know to be Christians. And one of the questions is, what are your thoughts about abortion? And one of the most common answers is this: well, that's a complicated issue. It's a complicated issue. That's not easy to resolve. Well, actually, it is an easy issue to resolve. It's not a complicated issue. In this whole argument, in this whole controversy, there is really only one question that matters. And if you are a pro-life person, this is the question you need to keep circling back to. You don't need to chase all the rabbit trails. This is where you need to go, because this is the only thing that matters in this entire debate. And here it is. What is the unborn? If you can establish that, then there really is not a good reason to kill the unborn. Well, you know, there may be a good reason, but those reasons are going to be pretty drastic, and it's still going to be very uncommon. Is it ever okay to kill the innocent? You could probably make an argument that sometimes it would be. In this case, I can't think of any except that the life of the mother was actually in danger. I mean physically in danger. So let's look at this question. What is the unborn? Now, here's the way I'm going to approach it. I'm going to show you some biblical evidence. That's not going to be the bulk of what I talk about. Then we're going to look at science. Then we're going to look at philosophy. And then I'm going to give you some practical steps to take. All right, so what is the unborn? Well, let's look at what the Bible has to say about this. Now, let me add, with this piece of information, this is only going to be convincing to a person who believes in the authority of the Bible. If they do not believe the Bible is God's inerrant word, you are wasting your breath to use this. But if the person self-identifies as a Christian, as a follower of Christ, this is where I would start. I actually convinced a guy one time of the immorality of abortion and the fact that we should prohibit it simply by using these verses. And so here's where I'm taking this. This is Exodus 21. By the way, Exodus chapter 20 is where we get the 10 commandments. The 6th commandment says you shall not murder. And so what we get by chapter 21 is kind of a fleshing out of what murder might look like. And so look at what this says. And you'll be able to put the pieces together with just me reading this. It says, when men strive together, and in this case the word strive means that they're fighting. They're not unified, except trying to hurt one another. When men strive together and hit a pregnant woman, so that her children come out, but there is no harm, the one who hit her shall surely be fined, as the woman's husband shall impose on him, and he shall pay as the judges determine. All right, so if the woman gets hit, the child is prematurely born, or even not prematurely born, and the child is okay. Well, you would assume if it's not prematurely born, it's okay. But nothing is wrong, then there could be a fine. Well, if it's a premature birth, there could be a fine. But if there is harm, that is to the child, to the unborn, then you shall pay life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burn for burn, wound for wound, stripe for stripe. By the way, anytime you see that phrase inserted in the biblical text, eye for an eye, it is always talking about corporal punishment, and actually it's always talking about capital punishment. And so what is this saying? If you kill the unborn, then you forfeit your life. I mean, this is unambiguous. There is no doubt about God's view of the unborn. God views the unborn as persons who are fully entitled to justice on the same level as born persons. I mean, you really can't get past that with this section of Scripture alone. And so this is where I would start for the person who identifies as a follower of Jesus Christ. Now, if they don't buy into the Bible, don't go here. But you don't really need to, because science and philosophy are on the pro-life side. And so here's where you can go with this. Here's what we know. There's no debate about this statement. The science of embryology says that at conception, that is when the sperm and the egg come together, that is conception, the unborn are distinct, living, and whole human beings. I'm not making that up. That's what the study of embryology tells us, that at conception, the unborn are distinct, living, and whole human beings. That's a great line to memorize if anybody ever asks you why you're pro-life. You can simply say, well, it's because the science of embryology says that at conception the unborn are distinct, living, and whole human beings. And therefore we may not kill them without a really, really good reason. Now, here's just one example of how this is true. This comes from a textbook called The Developing Human. By the way, I have several other quotes from other embryology texts. If you want more than one quote, send me an email, get me a message. You could even put a comment at the bottom of this video on YouTube. Hopefully there aren't too many crazies making comments, but you can ask me and I can give you some other quotes because I've got a whole list of them. But this is what Kenneth L. Moore and TVN Persaud in The Developing Human have to say. A zygote is the beginning of a new human being. Human development begins at fertilization, the process during which a male gamete or sperm unites with a female gamete or oocyte to form a single cell called a zygote. This highly specialized, totempotent cell marks the beginning of each of us as a unique individual. Let me pop it back to that other slide. That's essentially saying that at conception the unborn are distinct, we have our own unique set of DNA, we are living, and we are whole human beings, developing from within. Nothing is adding to us from the outside. So that's where you can go. That's what science tells us. I'm not appealing to the Bible here. All right? I'm simply using science to back up the truth the Bible has already informed us. Now, let's go a little bit further. So now we're going to delve into some philosophy. So we've looked at the Bible, we've looked at science. What about philosophy? Now, don't ever invoke philosophy. Don't ever tell a person that you're going to talk philosophy because their eyes will glaze over. But if you ever get a statement like this one, you need to use a little bit of philosophy. Philosophy is just good reasoning. This is a very typical response when you get into the subject of abortion. And I hear people who are Christians, or who at least purport to be Christians, say this. And I'm going to give you a response to it. Somebody says to you, while I personally am opposed to abortion, I think women should have the right to choose it. Now, what you should not do here is go into women's rights. What you should not do here is go into a defense of pro-life ideas. If somebody says, while I personally am opposed to abortion, I think women should have the right to it, you should simply ask a simple question. Why? Why are you personally opposed to abortion? There's really only one reason why anybody would be opposed to abortion. It's because they think it's taking an innocent human life. They think that it's murder. If it's anything other than that, there's no reason to be opposed to it. If the unborn are not persons, and if it's not murder to take their lives, then aborting is no more significant than removing a wart from the back of a person's hand. And so ask them that. Why are you personally opposed to abortion? If they answer it, they're going to say, well, because I think that it's killing a human being. Then you can simply rephrase what they said and ask them this. Oh, okay, so let me make sure I'm getting this right. While you're personally opposed to killing innocent human beings, you think that women should have the right to kill innocent human beings. You see, that's really what they're saying. They just don't get it, and so you need to clarify it for them. As much as possible, ask questions and simply repeat back, getting clarification. Now, once you've established this, I guarantee you they're going to ask you the next question, and here it is. You know, rather than come to terms with their actual view, they're probably going to say, well, what if a woman has been raped? Now again, here's what you don't do. Don't say, well, two rights don't make a wrong. Don't say that because of the trauma that women usually don't get pregnant. Don't make light of rape at all. All right? What if a woman has been raped? How do you answer this? Well, the answer to this, this is actually a great question, because to answer this can get you into the subject of abortion, can get you to talking about it in a very significant way. And so I'm going to give you a tactic here that you can use in different ways. You can also use this tactic if somebody says, well, if the child might be abused, or the child might not have a good quality of life, or the child might grow up in poverty, or the child might grow up in foster care. You can use this next tactic with any of those statements or this question. And here's what it is. It's called Trot Out the Toddler. You trot out the toddler. You simply ask this. And you can even use a little visual and say, okay, I've got little Chloe here, and Chloe is the product of rape. She was conceived by rape. Would it be okay to kill Chloe? And of course they're going to say, well, no, that's ridiculous. We would never kill little Chloe, the toddler. And you can ask, well, why not? Okay, and you see how that can get you into this whole subject, because that's going to take it to the next step. Oh, by the way, let me apply it this way. If somebody says, well, if that child might be abused, then I think it's okay to abort. Well, again, trot out the toddler. Here's little Timmy. Timmy might be abused. Would it be okay to kill him? And of course the answer is going to be no. And they're going to say, but the toddler's different. The toddler's not the same as the unborn. And that takes us to the next phase. There are only 4 differences between the unborn and the born. And these 4 differences do not give us good reason to kill one, but protect the life of the other. And this is a wonderful acronym that I commend to you. It's called the SLED acronym, and I promise you, you can find no differences between the born and the unborn other than these 4 things. In all the years that I've been having this discussion, nobody comes up with anything different. All right? And here are the differences. Size, level of development, environment, and degree of dependency. These are the only differences between the toddler and the unborn. And none of these are reasons that we can kill one and not the other. I mean, if you can kill the unborn for any of these reasons, you can certainly kill a toddler for these reasons. And let me give you some examples to help you understand these. First one, somebody makes this statement. So if you say, let me go back to my rape example. Well, no. Well, could we kill this toddler if she was conceived by rape? And the person might say, well, no, of course not. That's ridiculous. There's a difference between the toddler and the unborn. The unborn are microscopically small, smaller than the period at the end of a sentence. Well, see what they're using? They're using the size argument. Does size give us a good reason to kill? Well, let's see. Infants are considerably smaller than teenagers. Does that mean that we can kill infants because they're smaller? Does that mean that teenagers have more value? Or think about this. Men, generally speaking, are physically bigger than females. Does that mean that women are inferior? Does that mean that we can kill women? Or, you know, pick somebody famous. Here's a great one that I heard one time. What about Shaquille O'Neal and Hillary Clinton? Shaquille O'Neal is much bigger than Hillary Clinton. Does that mean that it's okay to kill her because she's smaller? You see, that argument about size falls apart. It doesn't really work. And so they might counter with this one. Well, the unborn aren't fully developed like the toddler. See, there's the L. There's level of development. Well, again, is it true that the unborn aren't fully developed like a toddler? Absolutely, that's true. However, what about this? A 4-year-old girl, her reproductive her reproductive organs are not fully developed like a 14-year-old. Does that mean then that we can kill the 4-year-old? Or this, did you realize that your ability to make decisions is not fully developed? That part of your brain is not fully developed until you're 25 or 26. Does that mean that we can kill you up to 25 or 26 because you're not fully developed? Your brain as a whole is not fully developed until around the age of 40. Does that mean that we can kill people under the age of 40? Absolutely not. So that one doesn't really work either. What about environment? And here's the way they'll say it. If it's in the womb, we may kill it or abort it. If it's outside the womb, it's a child, we may not kill it. Really, what's the difference? Why is inside the womb fair game, but outside the womb is not? Please explain that to me. How does a change in location change my value as a human being? If I step outside of this room right now, I've changed location. Does that mean that it's then okay to kill me? If at night I was snoring while I was lying on my back, and then I rolled over on my side, would it be okay then for my wife to kill me, smother me with a pillow, because I changed my environment? No, a change of environment does not give us a good reason to kill. And then what about degree of dependency? Somebody will say, well, the unborn are dependent on their mother's body to survive. Now, I could in a smart alecky way say, well, you know what? Some people in their 20s are still dependent on their mothers to survive. They still live in their mother's basements to survive. They're still living off their mother's paycheck to survive. Now, that's a little bit sassy. But how does dependency make it okay to kill somebody? A lot of people have diabetes and they're dependent on insulin. Does that mean it's okay to kill them? Or people who have pacemakers, they're dependent on that pacemaker. Is it okay to kill them? What about somebody who's on life support? Is it okay just to kill them? And I don't mean unplug it. I mean to actively tear them apart. Is it okay to do that? Of course the answer is no. Now let me add one little nuance to this, which somebody will probably bring up. They might say, but the unborn directly depend on the bodies of their mother for survival. And that's kind of like a gotcha. Well, still, I mean, what makes that okay to kill? I would want them to justify it. But I would give this example. What about conjoined twins? They depend on one another's bodies to survive. Does that mean that it's okay for us to murder them? No, it does not. Or you could even use it like this. Babies that are nursing are directly depending on the bodies of their mothers to survive. Can we kill those newborns? And the answer is no. So none of those are good reasons to kill the unborn. Size, level of development, environment, degree of dependency. For most people, the arguments don't get any better than that. And so you're typically very safe. Now let me say, we're just scratching the surface here, but most people are not sophisticated in their objections to the pro-life view. There may be one other way to go, but very few people even know it, so we're not even going to bother at this point. But I do suggest you keep on reading about this subject. There's a great book called Pro-Life 101 by Scott Klusendorf that I do highly, highly recommend. Go look up videos of Scott Klusendorf on YouTube, and you'll be served well by watching his videos. He's very on top of the arguments. All right, so let's wrap things up then with what to do here. How can we make a difference with this whole issue? Well, I think what should be very, very obvious to you, and since this is a teaching series on politics and law, please support pro-life candidates. Now, I don't mean you should give them their vote. I don't mean you should give them your vote just because they're pro-life. But please don't ever vote for a pro-abortion candidate. My opinion is this. If you aspire to leadership, but you can't tell the difference between who should and should not be killed, you are not qualified for office. You should not be entrusted with power, because political power is the power of coercion. It's the power of life and death. And if you're pro-abortion, you're not going to get my vote, ever. Now, sometimes I might have to abstain from voting. I know some of y'all will hate me saying that, but that's just the way it is. But I will never vote for a pro-choice candidate, ever. Second, personally uphold biblical values about sexuality and the family. That means you need to live out God's boundaries. It's one man, one woman, committed to each other in a marriage relationship for life. That's where sexual expression is to take place. If you're not personally upholding that value, you are a hypocrite, and you probably shouldn't be talking much about this subject. And you know what? If we lived out biblical values regarding sexuality in the family, abortion wouldn't even be the issue. It really wouldn't. The biggest consumers of abortions in this country are single females. Why? They're having sex outside of marriage. Yeah, I know guys are involved. And it's a dodge for them, too, to not take personal responsibility. But look, we as Christians, especially, need to uphold this value. So please, please, be a person of integrity. A third thing that we need to do is show abortion. Show abortion. What do I mean by that? I mean that people need to see what abortion really is. They need to see aborted babies. Yes, they do. Now, I'm not suggesting that you surprise people. I'm not suggesting that you shove images in people's faces or anything like that. But I am suggesting that you respectfully ask them and to let you show them what abortion looks like. Let me recommend a really good website. It's called abort73.com. And let me give you some examples of what you can see at Abort73. You can actually link people to videos that show the product of abortion, and you can see on the right, you can actually see abortion procedures. There used to be one online called Silent Scream, which showed an abortion taking place. You could actually see what was going on inside the womb, and the child, trying to get away from the instrument that was pulling it to pieces, has its mouth opened like it's screaming, but you can't hear the scream because the child is in amniotic fluid. So there are a ton of resources. Now, you better prepare yourself if you've never seen it, because it's quite shocking and difficult to look at. But I really think people need to see this, and it needs to not be hidden away from their eyes. If they can see it, they'll begin to understand what abortion really is. Also, here's a video on YouTube, Dr. Anthony Levitino, and this has become very, very popular. He's giving congressional testimony, and you can see this on YouTube, and in just a couple of minutes, he explains how abortions are performed. You can even see it in the little image that I have there. He's got a pair of forceps, and he's using his fist to illustrate the head of an unborn baby and what happens to the unborn baby. And it's chilling. He was a guy who was an abortion doctor and had a change of heart, and now he's an outspoken critic of abortion. Show them things like this. Let people see abortion. I think it will change their minds if they'll actually look at it. Okay, so that's the third one, show abortion. The fourth thing is to talk about it. Please do not shy away from this subject. Teach on it in your church. Talk about it if you have kids. Now, of course, they need to be the proper age to understand it. If it comes up, please don't avoid this. Yes, I know it's a controversial issue, but what I'm advocating is that you simply ask questions. Use a tactical approach. Use the examples that I gave you and talk about it. If the other person starts to get angry, just back off. It's okay. I'm not suggesting that you win an argument here. I'm suggesting that you gently, respectfully engage in the conversation. Because the good news is that we're making a difference. That a slim majority now of people in the United States have come to view abortion as taking the life of an innocent unborn human being. So it's making a difference. But you could also save a life. This is a young lady whose name I will not mention. So I'm not going to give up her identity, but I'm going to tell you the story about her. Way, way long ago, when I was a pastor, I was preaching one Sunday morning about sexuality. And in the midst of this sermon on sexuality, I talked very briefly about abortion. Abortion was not even the subject. I just talked about it, probably explained it a little bit. Unbeknownst to me, a young woman was visiting that morning who was pregnant. She was scheduled to get an abortion the next day, I think. I think she was scheduled for that Monday to get an abortion. And because she heard somebody explain what abortion actually is, she canceled her appointment. And that little girl is alive today just because somebody talked about abortion. It's one of the things that makes me really happy, is that something that I did, even though it was inadvertent in this way, actually saved somebody's life. I thank God for that. I thank God that this young lady is around. And I am confident that her mom is happy that she did not abort her. So please talk about abortion. And then the fifth thing, as Christians, don't just talk about abortion, but offer hope. A lot of women have had abortions. A lot of men have paid for abortions or pressured women into abortions. That's really bad news. Because if you've had an abortion, performed an abortion, talked somebody into abortion or paid for one, you are a party to a murder. You are. But the good news is that we're really all on a level playing field with God. We have all sinned and we all fall short of God's magnificent standard. We all deserve condemnation from Him. But through Jesus Christ, through faith in His Son, there is forgiveness. There is cleansing from our sins, and there is salvation. And so please, please, if you're going to be a pro-life advocate, always follow up with hope. If you're talking to somebody especially who's had an abortion, probably it happened at a very vulnerable time, don't let them off the hook. Yes, they committed an objectively evil moral act, but we all have. But through Christ, there is the possibility of forgiveness, of redemption. So offer hope. Don't leave Jesus out of this story. Okay, that'll do it for this segment. And so next up in this series, and this is my next to the last one, the next to the last one is, should Christians support same-sex marriage? That'll be fun.